Screening as part of the Melbourne Documentary Film Festival in July is a film called The Road to Patagonia. And it's my great pleasure to be speaking to the surfer turned filmmaker, Matty Hannon, who directed The Road to Patagonia. Welcome to Movie Metropolis.
Thanks, Peter. Yeah, nice to meet you.
Good to talk to you. This is such an extensive documentary about your travels and especially your road to Patagonia. How did it all come about that you decided to make a film about all of this?
Oh, it was a pretty slow process. I think there's something like 16 years of footage in there. And yeah, I suppose especially the first part of the film, I definitely didn't realize I was actually making a film. I came to filmmaking quite late, as you said. I'm more of a surfer turned filmmaker, and I initially picked up a little point and shoot video camera when I was living in remote Sumatra for about 5 years, and the reason I picked up a video camera was because it was completely isolated from any kind of communications. It was before the days of Facebook and all that stuff, and in my mind, I was like, oh, well, video is an amazing medium to be able to share why I've dropped off the face of Australia and left my friends and family for so long. And so I started recording everything that was going on around me, and some very interesting people and culture and environment and world-class surfing and stuff like that. And so, yeah, initially it was just basically just trying to share the memories with friends and family. But then when I came back with a whole bank of footage, I realized that I'd fallen in love with filmmaking, or at least cinematography. And so I went back and I studied film at RMIT in Melbourne, and did a master's in documentary filmmaking there. And then I settled into some sort of commercial work in Melbourne for a while, raised a bunch of money that might have almost been enough to be a house deposit, and realized that wouldn't have made me happy, getting a mortgage and all the rest of it, and set off on a big adventure, thinking that I would film it all, but regardless, if the film didn't work out at the end of the day, I would still, I wouldn't regret spending that money. It was something that was a personal adventure, something that would be enriching to my own life. And if I got a film off the back of it, that would have been a great bonus. And yeah, I mean, that's kind of the crux of it, I suppose, how it all came about. But it was also, I guess the film came about in a personal need to change my life too. So it wasn't just this filmic endeavor. It was, like I said, I've been living in remote Sumatra for about 5 years, where I'd become very close friends with traditional culture, a family over there, a clan, who are a hunter-gatherer culture. And they really opened my eyes up to a different way of living, and just inherently being disconnected from the internet or telephones or electricity or fridges or motorcycles or cars. There was none of that. My life obviously turned a very different path for those 5 years. And so when I came back to Melbourne, it was a very big shock trying to assimilate back into what is a beautiful city, an incredibly rich city in its own right, but something that's very different than an isolated island off the coast of Sumatra. And I found it really hard, to be honest, to be re-injected back into that, regular Western global capitalistic culture. It's probably pretty, a lot of people have felt those pressures, and for different reasons. And for me, setting off on a big adventure on this road to Patagonia was a way to try and fix my life. I was diagnosed with the depression and anxiety while I was living in Melbourne, and I figured the only way I could fix myself was trying to find that sense of freedom that I'd had a taste of while I was living in Sumatra.
What a fascinating journey, and that personal sort of response to your situation, to your health issues and so on. It's such an interesting way of coping with that. I found that quite incredible. So well done on that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't say it was the safest of ways of coping, there was but it was one way. And
Hmm.
funnily enough, it's worked out really beautifully. And I haven't had any of those issues since that time. And yeah, feeling very happy with life and very content. Life's changed a lot for me. So yeah.
That's excellent to hear. Film as therapy. I like it. It's a really wonderful way of moving forward. And as you say, 16 years in terms of having footage and so on. So tell me, why first of all Patagonia?
Well, I guess the title's a little misleading in the sense that it's really more about the road to Patagonia. Patagonia only features in the film for maybe 2 minutes or something like that. And so, yeah, the and maybe that's part of the narrative arc as well, is learning that it's more about the road than the destination. And that's
Mm.
a classic trope or cliche. But why? What I started off in Alaska, and then I went to the very top of Alaska by myself, and then rode a motorcycle down to Chile on a surfing adventure by myself. But along the way, I met my partner, who's from British Columbia, and then as we met people along the way, they really kind of, I don't know, cracked our cultural veneer of what is normal in the world. And with that backstory as well of living in Sumatra, I kind of already was leaning towards, yeah, just different stories that we tell ourselves socially as a society. What stories do we actually prescribe to? And I became interested in trying to find different people to interview in the filmmaking process, and
Mm.
that really again changed how we wanted to live our lives. And we ended up selling the motorbikes when we arrived in Chile and buying 4 horses, and we
Mm.
set off on like about a 6-month horse expedition with surfboards, which was its own little crazy little story in its own right. But yeah, why did I choose that region? I think I chose Alaska pretty much because I thought it would be the kind of the biggest shock to the system, the biggest thing that would rattle me out of Melbourne. I needed something that was a complete polar opposite to Melbourne. And I don't know, the weather wasn't too much different. It was pretty chilly, but obviously being out in the wilderness of Alaska with the grizzly bears and the moose and the wolves and all that sort of stuff was a really and to be honest, like, I joke about it now. When I was booking that ticket, I booked a one-way ticket to Alaska. I was romanticizing the idea of what it would be like and how I would do this triumphant, heroic journey. But when I got there, I was shit scared. It was the most terrifying thing I've ever done, really, was camping out there by myself, and quite a long way away. I wasn't in camping grounds or anything like that, and a long way from towns. And I had numerous run-ins with bears and wolves, and it wasn't as easy to just snap out of yeah, I guess your problems follow you, don't you? You can't just like fly over to the other side of the world and automatically change who you are. It's a long process, and that reflects in the title as well. That process of the road, the process of journeying, became the healing journey in itself.
It certainly is, and that's what I admired so much about the film, the actual journey, the road, less travelled in many respects, and finding people, and Heather, of course, who you've alluded to, who is so interesting. So tell me about actually filming all of this, because I gather you did pretty much all the filming. There was no one else, or perhaps Heather did some filming, or maybe you got some other people sometimes, but pretty much it was you setting up shots and filming this all.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Yeah, it's completely lo-fi independent filmmaking. I had 2 cameras. I had a Sony A7S and a Canon 5D Mark II, I think it was. And so, yeah, cameras that are laughable by today's standards. But interestingly enough, they worked quite well. And yeah, I mean, I work professionally now in the documentary space, and I've got obviously gear that's worth a hell of a lot more. It's all much more technologically advanced. But I look back at the simplicity of using a camera and a tripod, and sometimes I think it's almost more beautiful than all the drones and the, sliders and all the complications that you can bring to filmmaking. As an independent documentary filmmaker, obviously there's a sliding scale of filmmaking, but with the independent documentaries, sometimes it feels like paring it right back can almost become more cinematic in a sense, because you're using those classic techniques of just static shots on sticks. And so basically, I set off just turning the camera on myself in a sort of verite style of documentary. And I met Heather, who she never really had used a camera in her life. She'd probably never owned one. She didn't like photography, wasn't any good at it, to put it bluntly. But over the time, it turned out she was actually naturally quite gifted with composition, and so she learned, and she pulled some of the most beautiful shots in the film, I would say. So the camera stuff was pretty adventurous too. Obviously, it had to pack down into the panniers of a motorcycle for a year and a half, and then for 6 months, everything had to pack down onto these crappy little bags that we'd bought in the Santiago market in Chile, and that were not at all designed for horse packing by any means. And along with laptops and stuff like that, and our food and our wetsuits and our spear guns and our whatever else it was, food for the horses. So it wasn't what you would call typical. There was no support crew. But yeah, I think in a way it might bring a little bit of honesty to the film too, because as much as I'm not sure I fully believe in complete, observational cinema, that, that fly on the wall thing, because a camera present always changes the dynamic of a scene. But I think even in our little film, and I'm not trying to say it's some, pure observational doc by any means, but there were little moments where we'd just filmed ourselves so much over the time that, our little interviews on each other, I think there was a real truth and honesty in some of the interactions between us, documenting a love story, that they weren't for the camera. We kind of forgot that the camera was there. It's like, oh, you're bloody interviewing me again. How many times have you done that this week? And so I feel like there was it might not have had production values that a lot of other films do, but it's got a truth to it, I think.
I fully endorse that. In fact, the shots, a lot of the shots look great, and they're really well put together, and the travel is so compelling. In fact, there's one section of the film where you had your bike stolen, or you had a terrible event where you lost just about everything, and it's wow, that could have
Lost footage.
Yeah, you could have decided then and there that's the end of the expedition.
Totally. Yeah. That was a really hard time. And I lost all the drone footage. That was when DJI was first bringing out one of their first drones. And but looking back on it, I'm really glad that I lost the drone. I'm really glad that I lost the drone footage. I feel like, I don't know. There's something nice about not having drone shots in there. It's so funnily enough, I'm not happy that happened. It was a very big hurdle to climb over, drag myself over. But I suppose in documentary, a lot of the time, the most testing, brutal moments in a personal story, no matter who the subject is, unfortunately becomes a little bit of an asset to the film itself. So I kind of knew that going into it, and so I did film as many of the hard moments as I could. And but it's also, I think I would never have finish the film. I mean, you know better than anyone, Peter, how, you know, especially independent film with close to no budget it's so many people start, never finish. And there were many times where I thought I was never going to finish. And I don't think I would have had, I don't know if it's tenacity or stamina or whatever you want to call it. I don't think I would have been able to finish it if it hadn't have been for the fact that we felt we were sharing a story that was far beyond what our little love story or adventure film might be. And so it was interesting, you know, with all the different people that we'd interviewed along the way, and the backstory of the people in Sumatra, where I'd become very close with one particular hunter-gatherer family over there and learned a lot about their animistic culture. And I guess it shaped the way that I saw the world around us. It became apparent that we, you know, people all along the world, from the very top of the world to the very bottom of the world to Sumatra, where I'd been living, and of course, coming from Australia, I had a general understanding of Indigenous Australian culture, and so not that our film isn't, or messaging isn't, about Indigenous culture by any means. We're not trying to speak for Indigenous people by any means, but what I did like about the process of making this film is being able to provide a bit of a platform for different people along the way to share their perspectives and stories that are often ignored by mainstream films and culture. Yeah, and I think we were in a unique perspective to be able to sort of, you know, it's a very privileged thing to be able to travel the world with a camera and not really work. You know, we're working to make the film, but we weren't making money while we were traveling. We were in a unique perspective to be able to sort of go, whoa, hang on a second. Like, we've interviewed all these people around the world, and so many people are saying this same beautiful thing about the world. They're sharing a different story to the global modern Western capitalist story. They're saying something that is really inspiring and uplifting, and something that to me feels like a path forward if we could slow down the systems, the economic systems that, you know, keep us charging forward into some kind of environmental Armageddon. If we were to actually pause and just listen to the collective wisdom of so many of these people, whether they're Indigenous or not Indigenous, you know, that was what drove me to finish the film, was that there really is a message beyond our little love story or the adventure story. And that I think that message is, not the message, but that story is really downtrodden, you know, whether it's, and not taken very seriously in the, you know, in this day and age of science. I'm very much pro-science. It's not that I, you know, am a science skeptic or anything like that. I studied ecology before I went to study film, and so it's my background as well. But the problem with science is that it's also, through this, you know, rapid increase of knowledge that we've acquired as humans, we've also kind of, I don't know, we've reduced things to data sets in a lot of ways. We've reduced things to the molecular level and taken away a lot of the magic out of the human story. And that's why I was really interested in the animistic story of all the different people that we met along the way, that I think could be a really strong and pertinent conversation to be having in the environmental space in the modern time.
I endorse that. I certainly felt that as I was watching the film, that sort of cultural, anthropological, whatever you like to call it, observation and so on, apart from that sort of big city and an economic sort of approach. So I really admired all of that, and I found that really so interesting. So with all of that footage that you shot, tell me about the editing process. That must have been quite difficult.
Yeah, it's brutal. Well, as you know, documentary editing is very often brutal at the best of times, let alone when it's your first film,
Yeah.
and let alone when, you know, in a way it was a little bit of a, it's not observational, the film that we made, but we had no idea what the narrative arc was. No idea. We had no idea that that I was gonna lose the motorcycle, or no idea that
Mm.
we were gonna end up on horseback, and or that I was gonna meet Heather, who's now my partner and the mother of my child.
Mm.
And so all of these things occurred in sort of that old school type of documentary where you have to, by pure nature of the filmmaking process, you have to shoot a lot because there's so many different leads that may turn into something.
Mm.
And so, yeah, I have no idea what the shooting ratio was. It would probably scare the pants off you, Peter, if I actually quantified it. But it was brutal, and I had no money when we came back. Heather and myself, we lived in a caravan in Byron Bay once we came back, and we were woofing on a farm there so that we didn't have to pay rent. And so we were receiving food and accommodation. And I'm making it sound probably worse than what it was. I look back on that as one of the most beautiful epochs of my life, living on this little hill in a beautiful town that, on this particular farm, which is the closest farm to the beach in Byron Bay, it was like we were living in the 70s. You know, it's like all that tourism that exists in Byron and all the gentrification and all that sort of stuff. We'd managed to isolate ourselves from that. And so it was this beautiful time of our lives, but we were broke, and I had no funding for the film. I spoke initially with Film Victoria because I am from Victoria, and they were supportive. But obviously I'd moved from Victoria up to Byron Bay, and so I tried to speak with Create New South Wales and Screen New South Wales, or whatever those guys are called, and didn't have much luck. Same again with Screen Australia. Obviously, producing films in this manner where you're going very guerrilla, very independent, you've gone and shot everything before receiving any funding, they don't like that. And I knew that before going into it, but it was a little frustrating for sure when I knew I had a story, and and it was very tricky to find funding. And so I just plugged away and was working here and there. And I think it took maybe 4 or 5 years of editing. Maybe one of those years I didn't do any editing whatsoever. I put the project down, and a really solid producer from up in Queensland, a lovely lady. She, what do you call it when they acquire the rights to the film to shop it around? Well, anyway, we did
Sales
that for a
agent?
little bit. And
Yeah.
yeah, she was more of a production company that I would have teamed up with.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
anyway, we came up with some little deals, but they didn't really fit. I was pretty intent on making sure we had a really good budget for music. I'm pretty particular with music, and wasn't open to doing stock music. And so, yeah, came back to an independent approach to the editing. And luckily enough, I had a couple of friends who had commissioned me to do some commercial work over in California. That was photography work. They were intrigued in becoming private investors on the film. And so that was enough money to pay myself to continue the edit, as well as to pull on some amazing like story consultants on board. There was Mike Bolson and Harriet Clatterbuck from Byron as well. Those guys are up there. They're both a fair bit older. It was a great process. They're both in their 60s. And so it was probably the first real mentorship that I felt I'd had in the filmmaking sense. And yeah, it was a really beautiful experience to have some people that were really supportive of the idea and telling me that, yeah, you do have a film here. Don't let all these doubts, that all these rejections from the industry, all the gatekeepers that, are telling you that you're laughing. Just keep going and follow your heart. And I think through their belief in what I was doing, I eventually edited through the rest of the film, and and it ended up doing okay. So yeah.
And here we are with the finished product, which is fantastic. And it's great that it's screening as part of the Melbourne Documentary Film Festival. Will the film also be screened elsewhere?
Yeah, so it had its premiere at the Byron Bay International Film Festival, and it ended up winning the best film and best documentary there, which was a pretty awesome
Great.
feather in the cap for all that hard yakka, It's also been at Screenwave, Swift, in Coffs and Bellingen. It's been at the Gold Coast International Film Festival. It's about to have its international premiere in Hawaii at the Maui Film Festival. And yeah, so it's screening around for sure. Yeah, really stoked. It's selling out all the shows. I think in every festival except the Gold Coast, it's been one of the fastest selling. Well, including the Gold Coast, actually, has been the fastest, if not the fastest selling films. So yeah, anyway, I'm not trying to talk it up too much, but just very, very happy with how it's going. Obviously it's hard to get. We don't have a distribution partner representing us. And so getting into some of those A-list festivals is obviously a little bit tricky too. And I'm also learning a lot in that our film probably isn't the kind of film that some of those A-list festivals are looking for. We're not a hard-hitting, issue-based film. I think I made this film for a wide audience. I made it, I wanted a lot of people to enjoy it, and our demographics that are in the audience are reflected in that. It's really cool to see people in their 60s, quite a lot of people turning up, and then all the way down, there's the surfing demographic and the young adventurous people demographic, but there's also kids coming along. It's I'm really stoked to see that it's got wide appeal, which is what we went for. So yeah,
fully understand that. It certainly does have wide appeal, and I think that's terrific. So Matty, good to talk to you. I just wanted to ask you, are you now in the process of making another film?
Yeah. I do professionally. I'm a documentary filmmaker now. So I've just shot 2 half-hour documentaries this year, and I'm in the process of overseeing the edits for those ones at the moment. And what else have we got on the plate? Yeah, I've been asked to do a bunch of other commercial things. I exclusively do documentaries. I don't do any adverts or any kind of television stuff. Well, documentary stuff, but no adverts. And yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of ideas in my head as to how I get the next feature off the ground, and I'm not up to that stage right now. Right now, we're focusing on the release of the film. And we're currently chatting with Madman and Garage Entertainment. They're about to send through a deal memo for distribution. So that's really exciting. And we're looking to do the film tour down the East Coast later this year, which is really exciting. And then we'll probably take it over to North America as well. And see where it leads us from there. So I think before diving into any more new projects, I really want to see this one out and just enjoy the conversations and the people that I meet. I'm really enjoying all the different people that this film is now connecting us with. So yeah, that's a beautiful part of the process.
Well done on that. That's a terrific process, and sharing the film out and being there for Q&As and so on. I think that's a terrific way to do that. Can I just quickly ask, what are the subjects of those 2 short documentaries that you've made?
Yeah, sure. So the first one is because I'm in the surfing world, I kind of do these, I guess it's sort of become my niche in a way. In the same sense that The Road to Patagonia is a surf film, not really. Out of the 90 minutes, there's probably 3 minutes of actual surfing in it. But I've kind of turned that into my niche. And so the first film is actually about seismic testing in the Southern Ocean off the coast of Victoria and Melbourne, and off the coast of Tasmania as well. There's some American companies that want to do the largest seismic testing blasting in the world to this date, that's off our coast down there in the Southern Ocean. And a lot of people aren't aware that, every 10 seconds, one of these blasts, it's 250 decibel, which is more, it's louder than the atomic bomb that was dropped on Hiroshima to end World War II. And these companies are blasting the ocean every 10 seconds, all day, all night, for weeks, months on end, literally without stopping very often. And so that's an environmental film that's also mixed in with surfing. And so it's just for internet release. It's been commissioned by the Surfrider Foundation, as well as a bunch of supporting companies like Patagonia and that sort of thing. And then another half-hour film that we're just about to do, they're going to tour this year as well. Sorry, the first one of tour this year. The second one is about, it was commissioned by Patagonia, the clothing brand. And that's about a river called the Clarence River, which is in northern New South Wales, with its the mouth of the river coming out next to Yamba. And again, that one's about copper mining up in the headwaters of the river, and looking at the risks associated with tailings dam failures, and just getting community storytelling on a really important local issue like that. And again, tying surf into it. And so, and then there's actually another half-hour documentary, but I won't go into it all because, we're obviously running out of time a little bit. But the schedule's super busy, and which is exciting. But one thing I'm learning is to, you've really got to make sure you reserve a bit of energy for yourself, because it was only probably last week that I was feeling very burnt out from the process of, you're doing what you love and you're really passionate about not only filmmaking, but the stories themselves. And you tend to take a lot of the passion on a personal level. And I think it's finding that balance now, making sure I don't get too deep in the work side of things. So.
Well, I admire your tenacity, and the projects sound really interesting and important. And congratulations on The Road to Patagonia, which is screening as part of the Melbourne Documentary Film Festival. And we've been speaking to the director, Matty Hannon. Matty, thank you so much for talking with me.
Thanks, Peter. I really appreciate it. It's been a good convo, and all the best.
Okay, all the best to you. See you later.
Take care.
Okay, bye-bye.